In every crime, a story of a survivor, of someone left behind, of someone determined to solve a mystery. These are the stories of crimes that changed lives forever. This is Justice Rules.
A mystery that's haunted a small town for more than a decade. A 10-year-old disappears while walking home from a friend's house.
I just want Lindsay to come back.
The community never the same.
It was a little town where everybody knew everybody, and it was a beautiful summer.
And a mother brought to her breaking point for years.
I'm going to do what I have to do to find my daughter.
But what happened to Lindsey Baum? Where did she go? Here's reporter Monique Ming-Lavin with the small town secret that is still unraveling.
10-year-old Lindsey Baum loved Harry Potter and Twilight. She was just 2 weeks away from her 11th birthday, living with her mother and brother in McCleary, Washington, a town with fewer than 2,000 people. On June 26, 2009, she went to a friend's house near her home. She wanted to spend the night, but her friend's mother said no, so she left at 9:15 p.m. to return home. It was just a 10-minute walk, 5 blocks. It was familiar, it was well lit. She was spotted by a neighbor on the way, but that would be the last time Lindsay was seen alive. Around 10 p.m., Lindsay's mom, Melissa, called the friend's house.
Michaela's mom said Lindsay was only there about 10 minutes before they told her to head home because it was going to get dark. And normally Lindsay would call me so that I could go and get her, and she didn't have her cell phone. She left it at home.
Lindsay's phone was at home on the charger. At 10:45, Melissa called police.
I'm numb. I'm at the numb part now. I had my fit and kind of cried myself out, and now I'm just numb.
Neighbors and friends joined the search.
I just want Lindsay to come back because she's going to get hurt out there.
They passed out flyers.
All I know is I passed out about 50 of these flyers last night, and God bless Lindsay. I hope you come back. Come home. It's a tight community. Let's see you come home, kid.
Investigators worked to eliminate the possibility that Lindsay ran away or caught a ride with a stranger.
All of those different scenarios are things that are being considered, along with the worst case scenarios that, you know, she's the victim of foul play and or some type of predator behavior.
It's just scaring me a lot because it was a few days ago and she's been gone a few days.
I told her no, she couldn't spend the night. You know, if I had said yes, you can stay the night, she'd be home right now.
Over the next days and weeks, law enforcement ramped up the search for Lindsay. They brought in a National Guard helicopter. The sheriff's office dive team searched a nearby creek. Other searchers emptied dumpsters to make sure nothing went untouched. The Horse Patrol joined, focusing on some wooded areas outside of town. Off-road motorcycles were added to the search as it expanded to logging roads.
It is difficult because I think all of us have children or have had children at that particular age, and it's heart-wrenching.
Teams fanned out in the neighborhood where Lindsay was last seen, beating bushes, knocking on doors. FBI agents continued searching the neighborhood for clues. They found nothing. 3 months later, a possible break. Law enforcement served search warrants on a property just outside McCleary. Detectives say they were acting on credible evidence when they arrived at this property. The affidavits for the warrants indicated there were discrepancies in the alibi of a man who lived there. Detectives wanted to talk to him because someone reported his car in the area where Lindsay was last seen. When police asked where he was that night, he said he was working a second job at a youth camp, but he had actually been suspended weeks earlier. Detectives say the man also made a disturbing statement to a friend the day after Lindsay disappeared.
A friend said that he thought that she had been kidnapped and killed and cut up, as I recall.
The homeowner told a reporter, quote, "They didn't find anything here because we didn't do anything to that little girl, and the only reason they are doing this search is he gave the wrong answer to a question by a detective on the telephone." The homeowner said the police and media had no right to put the family through the search. At the time, Lindsay's mother said she understood the family's frustration, but her daughter's life was at stake.
If they end up being completely innocent, I'm sorry, but at the same time, my daughter's missing. Everybody's a suspect right now.
After 2 days of searching, detectives announced they had found nothing. They said the man did not have anything to do with Lindsay's disappearance, and they were back at square one. And Melissa Baum was back to desperation. She spent her first holiday season without her daughter. 5 long months missing without a trace. Thanksgiving Day, she said, was especially hard.
Excruciating. I've had hopelessness and fear, and now I've kind of hit the anger stage, and I'm going to do what I have to do to find my daughter.
After the strongest lead proved fruitless, Melissa Baum couldn't hide her frustration.
It's been 5 months, and they still have nothing. So we need outside help.
To that end, friends organized fundraisers.
We all miss Lindsay here in McCleary, and I hope these funds will help bring her back to us.
Money her mother would use to hire someone to help find her daughter.
I'm going to do everything to bring her home. And if that means hiring every private detective in the country, I will.
She never gave up. 4 years after her 10-year-old daughter vanished, she was still posting flyers, showing people what Lindsay might then look like.
It's just to point out to the public that she's not a little girl anymore. She's a young woman, and she's not going to look exactly like she did when she disappeared. She looks different.
Seeing the age-progressed photo of Lindsay, who would be turning 15, offered new hope and also new heartache.
Just seeing it's kind of reminds me how much time I've missed with her.
In the 4 years after Lindsay's disappearance, Grace Harbor detectives checked out 4,000 tips. They interviewed nearly 40 people of interest, but they never found anything that led to Lindsay.
We're going to keep working on this case until we figure out who did this, and then we're going to bring Lindsay home, and we're going to hold whoever did this responsible.
I want my daughter home. No matter what, I want her home.
And then in September of 2017, hunters found remains in the mountains outside Ellensburg, Washington, hours away from where Lindsay disappeared. It would take months before investigators would announce that the body belonged to Lindsay. Dozens of canine teams from Washington, Idaho, and Montana, a total of more than 10 law enforcement agencies, helped search the area. It was steep with a lot of trees, large cliffs, and deep ravines. Sheriff Rick Scott said the search crews were looking for anything that would lead to information about Lindsay's killer.
It could be anything, quite frankly, from forensic evidence to something that will speak to cause and manner of death. I mean, the gamut is wide open with regard to that. So we'll be looking for any and everything from minor forensic evidence to evidence that would point to a suspect.
He wouldn't talk about what they found.
At this point, the only people that know that information are us and the person that's responsible for this homicide and kidnapping.
But Kittitas County Sheriff Gene Dana said the area was so secluded that anyone who would dump a body there had to know how to get there.
Well, it's not a road that goes to any place in particular, so you'd really have to be familiar with the area, either through hunting or hiking or something, so you'd have to have been there before.
After learning investigators had found her daughter's remains, Melissa Baum spoke out again.
There are no words. The fact is, a monster stole my 10-year-old little girl, and they murdered her. And they dumped her like trash in the woods. So my fight now has turned from looking for my daughter to finding who killed her. This person is a monster, and I grew up teaching my children that monsters didn't exist. So now when you're telling your children monsters don't exist, you're lying.
Still desperate for answers, Lindsay's mom wasn't giving up on who killed her daughter, and neither were investigators.
To find her that far away is probably the biggest clue we have now.
I'll go to hell before I just stop and let them get away with it.
And then a similar case raises red flags. But will it help to find Lindsay's killer? The story continues with a twist, or does it? Here again is Monique Ming-Lavin.
In June of 2021, investigators started looking into a possible connection. Deputies arrested a man named Paul Beaker, accused of kidnapping and raping a 17-year-old girl in McCleary back in 2003. After the attack, she got away and went to a hospital where DNA was collected. And it wasn't until 2020 that investigators got a match. Well, Beaker was never accused of committing any crime related to Lindsey Baum.
I've worked, about 27 years in law enforcement. These type of circumstances, these are the only two that come to mind.
Two young girls, both from the same area, both kidnapped within years of each other. Investigators also say Beaker lived in the area at the time.
We're a rural county. We don't get a lot of kidnappings overall. And to have two of them from the very same area and close to each other and similar circumstances just all of a sudden raised a bunch of red flags to them.
As for a link to Baum, investigators say Beaker raised red flags, but that's as far as they would go. In a new interview in 2022, Sheriff Rick Scott said investigators were still looking into any possible connection.
At this point in time, we do not have any evidence that would support an arrest of him for anything outside of what we've already arrested him for.
Scott says this is still a very active investigation.
I believe today, as I believed in June of 2009, that there's somebody out there that has information that they have yet to share with anyone. It may be just some small piece of information, but I believe that there's people out there, aside from the person responsible for kidnapping and killing Lindsay, that has some idea as to who's involved.
As for the steps investigators are taking now.
And there's a lot of things that we have going on involving a lot of highly technical and technology that's available to us now in 2022 that wasn't available to us in 2009.
Scott says over the past 13 years, the case has become extremely personal to the investigators involved.
You can't do this job and not have it become personal. And these types of investigations, especially involving children, become very personal to everybody that's involved in the case. I mean, we all have children, we all have grandchildren, nieces, nephews, neighbors. You can't help but relate to it on a personal level.
He believes this case forever changed the small Washington community.
The face of the community has changed a lot in over a decade. Back when this incident occurred, the community, truly lost its innocence. It was a little town where everybody knew everybody, and it was a beautiful summer in 2009, and kids ran around without fear of anything bad really happening within the community. And when this happened, it shattered that innocence that everybody enjoyed about living in that small town. The joke at the time was, the best thing about a small town is everybody knows everybody, and the worst thing about a small town is everybody knows everybody. And so there weren't any secrets. Well, then all of a sudden, this massive secret has appeared and remains in place after all this time. But if you drive through the city of McClary today, you'll see dozens of signs advocating for information and leads and things that will lead to the arrest of the person responsible for kidnapping and killing Lindsey Baum.
But I'm going to do everything to bring her home. And if that means hiring every private detective in the country, I will.
The investigation remains open. Anyone with information is asked to call the Lindsey Baum tip line at 360-964-1799.
Still to come on Justice Rules, a murder mystery with a twist no one saw coming.
He was looking more into the route of him being seen as the submissive female of a relationship.
The dismembered body and cyber evidence that led investigators to a bizarre story of love and betrayal. A 6-year investigation filled with twists and turns led investigators in Ohio to a dramatic end in a bizarre murder. It began with a young man's search for his sexual identity and ended in transition, rejection, and murder. Reporter Cheryl McHenry sat down with investigators who are sharing vivid details of how they were able to solve this mystery.
Mercer County Sheriff's Office.
The mystery began January 3rd, 2016, northwest of Dayton, Ohio.
But I was just out walking my dog, and I came across some bones that looked to me to be human. Maybe they're not.
The caller was right. The bones were human.
We had a majority of the torso area, but we didn't have from the elbows or knees down, and we also did not have the skull.
Someone had been murdered, so the case fell into the hands of Detective Sergeant Megan Baker with the Mercer County Sheriff's Office.
I mean, there was apparent saw marks that you could tell that this individual had been dismembered.
State investigators and forensic anthropologists tried to crack the case but couldn't, so the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation got involved.
The skeletal remains were first brought here to the forensic biology lab to try to get a DNA sample in order to determine who this person was.
Scientists successfully extracted DNA but found no match. All they knew, the victim was a man between 20 and 35 years old. Time went on, 4 years in fact, when criminal intelligence analyst Jennifer Lester took an interest in the case of this young man, Ryan Zimmerman, missing since 2015.
But as soon as it came on my radar, that was what I realized: we had never gotten DNA from his family.
So they went to his parents' house all the way in Corbin, Kentucky, and with DNA now in hand, a match. Ryan's remains were those found dismembered in 2016.
He loved video games, he loved the computer, he loved cartoons, and he loved playing with his brother Ray.
As Detective Carla Bacher learned more about Ryan in hopes of solving the puzzle to his gruesome death, she says there was another side of him he kept hidden from his family.
He had made a post on Craigslist, personals, so he was looking for more of someone to take care of him, and he was looking more into the route of him being seen as the submissive female of a relationship.
Was he interested in transitioning to being a woman?
He started looking into some of it, such as the hormone therapy, and he was looking into some of the voice training in order to get that way. He also would go shopping for different female clothing.
Many of these details came from the BCI's Jennifer Lester, who analyzed Ryan's Google searches, phone records, and social media activity.
It was very important in this case because it helped build his timeline, who he was speaking with, the reason he came here, where he went. All of that data would have been lost if we wouldn't have had the cyber evidence to back it up.
What did the data reveal? Ryan had met someone, a married man named Corey Buzzard. In August 2015, Ryan moved from Corbin, Kentucky to Columbus, Ohio, and into an apartment with Corey and his wife Sarah Buzzard and a third person, a transgender woman named Naira Whitaker.
He was nervous about that because Corey had warned him that Naira did not like other people to basically be out exploiting their sexualities. She felt that if you wanted to be a female, you needed to portray yourself as a female and not let anyone else know otherwise.
Detective Bacher said for the first few weeks, Ryan had a relationship with Corey Buzzard, while Sarah Buzzard was having a relationship with Naira Whitaker. But by late September, Corey no longer wanted Ryan around and told him to leave. Corey left the apartment that weekend, so Ryan appealed to Sarah to let him stay.
Sarah told us that she told him, no, Corey wants you gone. You're here for Corey's purpose, not mine, so you need to leave. Which then she told Naira how her and Ryan's conversation had gone, and that's when the plan was developed at that point in time.
The plan, detective said, to kill Ryan.
Naira was allegedly the planner of the whole situation, and Sarah kind of got brought into that plan, but they both followed through with killing Ryan.
According to detectives, Sarah strangled Ryan in the apartment and the women dismembered him in the bathtub.
And then they dispersed Ryan's dismembered body throughout the state of Ohio. They had come back home to find Corey home, and they left it under the ruse that Ryan had just left.
In January 2016, the same month Ryan's remains were found in Mercer County, Corey and Sarah Buzzard's divorce was final, and Sarah married Naira Whitaker. And they disappeared. Or did they? By July 2021, investigators were closing in, searching the Columbus apartment where the four had lived in 2015. They also located the Toyota Corolla Sarah Buzzard had sold. In both places, even years later,
detectives found traces of human blood. With evidence in hand on August 25th, detectives went in for the arrest. Their key suspect, Sarah Buzzard, who had moved with her wife Naira to Marion, Indiana. Once in custody, Sarah confessed. The motive?
Love. Yeah, Miss Buzzard, during a interview with her, she explained that she loved Naira so much, and it was kind of a plan of theirs. If she didn't follow through doing what they did, that she was going to lose Naira.
With Sarah in jail, officers returned to the house to arrest Naira, who had only been questioned before. She denied any involvement, and then
she ended up pulling a firearm from her purse and died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Sarah Buzzard pleaded guilty to aggravated murder and was sentenced to 30 years to life in prison. Finally, closure for Ryan Zimmerman's family.
He didn't deserve to go through what he did. He was only, an individual that was just trying to find himself, basically, and his place in this world.
At least he gets to be home with his family. They know what happened.
Thank you for joining us. And remember, for so many of these families, one tip could be the key to bringing them closure and putting those responsible behind bars for good.